Richard Ramirez and Jeffrey Dahmer are just two of the names that might come to mind when you consider true crime in the 1980s. These callous serial murderers and their infamy have a habit of overshadowing other cold and unsolved cases of the decade, leaving many families without answers and their stories forgotten. In today's episode, we aim to shed light on 4 terrifying, long-forgotten cold cases of the 1980s. But first, we'd like to thank Guardio for sponsoring today's episode. Protecting yourself online is even more crucial than ever, especially as hackers and malware are becoming ever more sophisticated, and even tech-savvy people can't always tell if a site is a phishing scam or not. We all rely on our browsers to remember key information for us, from our credit card information to all of our credentials, addresses, and more. With all this personal information at stake, we need something to help us know we're safe while browsing online. And that's where Guardio comes in. Guardio is a dedicated, super easy-to-use browser extension that protects you while you browse, detecting potential threats before you even reach any harmful sites. This is a totally new way to protect your browser and online activity, as most traditional solutions only remove threats once they're already on your device, and at that point, they could already have caused harm or hijacked your information. Guardio stops this before it even happens, protecting you and your information from anyone trying to steal your data. It's packed with the most advanced security features and will immediately block malicious pop-ups, dangerous downloads, phishing attempts, and much more. Guardio also offers cross-platform identity monitoring, so if you sign up through your mobile, you'll get real-time alerts once your data is breached or leaked. And the best part is that one Guardio account covers 5 family members at no extra cost. We all know that protecting yourself and your family isn't always as easy as it seems, and we all need a little help sometimes. So start securing your on-life and activity with a 7-day free trial. Go to guard.io/coldcasedetective, link in the description, and get 20% off their very affordable premium plan and a free security scan to detect existing threats found on your device. It only takes 30 seconds, and you are fully protected. And now let's dive in with today's mysteries. Cheri Nichole Barnes. 2-year-old Cheri Nichole Barnes was in the care of her biological mother, a 20-year-old woman who went by the name Sissy at the time of her disappearance. In 1986, the pair, along with Sissy's husband, Larry Vassar, moved to St. Louis, Missouri. Very little information is available in Cheri's case, but what we know for certain is that Vassar forced Sissy into sex work, and their relationship seems unstable and less than savory. The mother of one frequented Independence Avenue in St. Louis to bring home money for her husband. On December 1st, 1986, Sissy vanished from the couple's home. Due to the hazy, vague nature of the details in this case, it is unknown if she was seen leaving with Cheri, as the toddler's whereabouts seemed to be undocumented at the time. Sissy's body was discovered in the Mississippi River in February of 1987, 2 months after she vanished. She was nude, and there were no signs of her child at the scene. Her cause of death is unclear, but it was concluded that she was the victim of a homicide. Sissy remained unidentified until 7 years later in 1994, when her family finally contacted the authorities to report her missing. It was then that the police began their investigation into her death and Cheri's disappearance. The toddler was allegedly last seen in Kansas City, Missouri, with Vassar on January 7th, 1987, but she has never been seen or heard from again. Following her mother's death, Cheri should have been taken into the care of Sissy's family members, but they never gained custody of her. Investigators working on the case eventually tracked Larry Vassar down in the mid-1990s and discovered that he was in prison for armed robbery. His earliest release date is 2028. Vassar told the authorities that he knew where his stepdaughter was and stated she was being looked after by his family while living under another name in the Kansas City area. If this is true, she may not even realize she is a missing child. However, it's hard to know if Vassar is telling the truth, or if this is simply a lie he made up in order to hide her true fate. He reportedly offered to give Sissy's mother photos and a recording of Cheri's voice if she paid him $500, but it seems that the family never took him up on this offer. Cheri Barnes is still missing to this day, and it's unclear if she is alive or not. Her date of disappearance is listed as December 1st, 1986, the day her mother vanished, but she was allegedly seen alive on January 7th, 1987, in Kansas City. Cheri is a biracial female with brown hair and brown eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she was just 2 years old, 4 feet tall, and weighed 80 pounds. If she is still alive, she will be 38 years old. If you have any information about her disappearance, you can contact the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department at 314-231-1212. Patricia and Amanda Dixon. 25-year-old divorced mother of one Patricia Dixon worked as a secretary in 1984. Having split from the father of her 5-year-old daughter Amanda, she was living in Seattle with her parents and doted on her young child every moment that she could. For months, she put money aside so that she could one day take Amanda to the most magical place on Earth, Disneyland. Patricia and Amanda checked into the Anaheim Motor Park Inn near Disneyland in Anaheim, California on Monday, March 26, 1984. They were due to leave on Friday the 30th and were last seen together on Tuesday the 27th, where they were spotted returning from the theme park and hanging out by the motel pool between 3 and 4 p.m. For hotel staff and other guests, nothing seemed amiss, but the exciting trip took a tragic turn for Amanda and Patricia when they were slain in cold blood in the early hours of the following morning. At 1:30 p.m. on Wednesday the 28th, a maid entered the hotel room only to be greeted by a bloodbath. In the corner of the room, Patricia's body lay, still and cold, face up on the carpet. She was naked but for her underwear, which had been pulled down to her knees. A cigarette had been left positioned between her legs. She had been shot twice in the back and 3 times in the head. The maid noticed a lump beneath the bed covers, which revealed Amanda, clad in her pajamas and clutching her newly purchased Minnie Mouse plush toy. She had been shot twice in the back of the head. The murder weapon was a small caliber handgun. After the autopsies were carried out, it was revealed that neither Patricia nor Amanda had suffered sexual assault, and they bore no other wounds outside of the gunshots. Detectives working on the case had few leads to go on, and theorized that Patricia had let in her attacker because there were no signs of forced entry at the scene. This suggested that the mother of one may have known the perpetrator or had reason to trust them. The pair's estimated time of death is around 5 a.m. Former boyfriends of Patricia's were investigated and ruled out, and while authorities looked into the idea that Amanda's biological father was involved, he appeared to have a watertight alibi as he was in Boston at the time serving in the Coast Guard. Following the horrific crime, no witnesses came forward to reveal they had heard gunshots or seen anyone leaving the scene. Online sleuths have suggested that the other guests didn't wish to get involved, while law enforcement has noted their belief that something was used to muffle the sound of the weapon. The hotel room had been ransacked, but nothing appeared to have been taken, so both robbery and sexual motives were eliminated from the inquiry. Patricia's mother noted in 1984 that she believed the crime was committed by somebody her daughter knew, and who knew she was going to the Anaheim Motor Park Inn. Reportedly, a man was seen near Patricia's room at some point on the day of her death, and he matched the description of someone she was close to. Her mother stated he was a go-between for somebody she dated. Over a year later, in August of 1985, Patricia's mother attempted to sue the motel, although it's unclear what the outcome of this lawsuit was. A detective by the name of Dave Tuttle also revealed that the police had learned that a clerk told Patricia shortly before her death that a man had stopped by and shown him a message on a card for her, which read, "You'll know me when you see me." However, the man took the card with him rather than leaving it behind, so the police were unable to see it for themselves and examine it for clues. This ominous message has left online detectives wondering if the slayings were committed by a professional. The lack of articles available on this case make it difficult to reach any concrete conclusions, as many of the statements about Patricia's life, and those who may have wanted to harm her, are vague at best, and many of those cited in online forums are no longer available. If you have any information about the murder of Patricia and Amanda Dixon, you can contact Orange County Crime Stoppers using the tip form linked in the description below. Alma Root. Alma Violet Root did not have the most pleasant of upbringings. As a child in the late 1970s, she ran away from home with her older sister, Laura Huff, to escape the sexual abuse they both endured at the hands of their father, who was later convicted of sexually assaulting his daughters and was sentenced to prison. Following the incarceration of their father, the sisters were placed into foster care, and although they were often split up and rehomed separately, they maintained contact and kept a close relationship with one another. Their relationships with their other family members are unclear, although it is known they had an older sister who had already left home. In the lead up to Alma's disappearance, both she and Laura went to live with their grandmother in Applegate, California. Alma was last seen on January 1st, 1980, when a 25-year-old man named Scott Petschek picked her up from her home. Petschek was supposedly Alma's boyfriend at the time, despite her being a 14-year-old child. According to Petschek, the pair spent time with his grandmother before Alma asked him to drive her to Rio Linda, an area in Sacramento County in California, where she allegedly had an aunt. It is unclear whether Alma really had an aunt here or not, as sources give conflicting information about this part of the story. Some sources state that the aunt missed her niece as she was not home at the time. Others have noted that no such aunt in Rio Linda existed. Whatever the case may be, Petschek claimed that he dropped Alma off and then left her to go to McClellan Air Force Base, where he worked. When he returned to collect the teenager, however, she was nowhere to be found. Petschek told authorities that he did not consider her disappearance unusual, as Alma occasionally hitchhiked and ran away. It has been noted that the 14-year-old may have hitchhiked with a male companion after she was dropped off, although this is where information becomes unclear. As with many minors with a history of running away in the 1980s and earlier, Alma's disappearance did not alarm local law enforcement. They theorized that she had left of her own accord. However, her sister, Laura, disputed this, arguing that she and Alma always left together and the 14-year-old would never have gone off alone. She later alleged that Petschek had told her she'd never find Alma when she asked him what had happened to her sister. Alma's case quickly stalled due to a lack of interest from law enforcement, and it remained cold until 1991, when her father was released from prison. He was never considered a suspect because he was behind bars at the time of her disappearance. Following his release, he confronted law enforcement about the status of the investigation, which caused the police to re-examine the case. Petschek was re-interviewed, and the well behind his grandmother's home was searched, although nothing was found. Notably, at some point after Alma's disappearance, Petschek was convicted of child molestation in a separate case and is now a registered sex offender, still living in California. While he has never been charged concerning Alma's case and maintains his innocence, investigators consider him a person of interest. Alma was initially suspected of being one of two Jane Does. There was some speculation that she was a Jane Doe dubbed as the Lime Lady, who was found in Oklahoma in 1980. However, in 2022, Jane Doe was identified as Tamara Tiggart, a 20-year-old from Las Vegas whose murder is still unsolved. It was also theorized for a time that Alma was Callie Doe, or Caledonia Jane Doe, a teenage girl found in November of 1979 in New York. However, in 2015, Callie Doe was identified as 16-year-old Tammy Jo Alexander, who vanished from Brooksville, Florida in the spring of 1979. Her case is still unsolved. Very little other information is available in Alma's case. Theories about what may have happened to her range from her being the victim of a serial killer or being slain by Petschek. Her grandparents and father have since died, but her mother and two sisters are still alive. Laura hopes to one day discover the answer as to what fate befell her younger sibling. Alma Root was last seen on January 1st, 1980 in Auburn, California. She was just 14 years old. She is described as a white girl with brown hair and brown eyes, and she has a tattoo of a blue heart about the size of a quarter on her breast. She may go by her middle name, Violet. When she was last seen, she was 5'4" and weighed 130 pounds. If she is still alive, she will be 57 years old. If you have any information on Alma's disappearance, you can call the Placer County Sheriff's Department on 916-889-7800. Cheerleader in the trunk, Jane Doe. On August 24th, 1982, two mushroom pickers stumbled across a steamer trunk a few feet from a gravel road in Gambrill State Park in Frederick, Maryland. While the trunk was in plain view, sticks and leaves had been placed over it, possibly in a feeble attempt to obscure it. As the mushroom pickers drew closer, they noticed the foul stench emanating from the trunk and decided to call the police. Lieutenant Tom Chase of the Frederick PD recalled, "They came upon this trunk, and what they found inside were the remains of the victim that were literally melted because of the heat. Inside the trunk was the petite corpse of a woman. She had been dead for at least several months, which would place her demise in the spring of 1982 at the latest, but she may have been in the trunk for as many as 10 years. The forensic anthropologist who examined the remains noted that Jane Doe had several injuries, including wear to her back, hips, and feet. They suggested that the back and hips injuries could indicate that the woman was active in gymnastics, cheerleading, dancing, or other sports. Meanwhile, the injuries to her feet indicated that she wore high heels often. Online sleuths have suggested that Jane Doe may have been an exotic dancer. She also had spondylosis, a defect or stress fracture in the lumbar vertebrae that may have been asymptomatic. Other than her injuries, investigators were able to tell very little about Jane Doe. The rate of decomposition meant that her skin and eye colors could not be determined, although it was concluded that she had dark brown, medium-length, slightly wavy hair. She may have dyed it, as her other body hair was a reddish-brown color. She was also found with no jewelry or clothes, although a dark towel was found near the trunk. She was initially believed to be between the ages of 17 and 45, although this age range has been narrowed in recent years to between 17 and 27. Furthermore, Jane Doe's cause of death could not be determined, but the forensic anthropologist suggested she may have been strangled. The only other notable details in Jane Doe's case are that her earlobes may have stuck out more than most people's, and she had extensive dental work done, including fillings, root canals, and crowns. This has indicated to police that she was from a middle-class background, and dentists who examined her treatments explained that the types she received weren't done very frequently, but were taught in dental school. Investigators do not believe that Jane Doe, who was dubbed the cheerleader in the trunk because of the possibility that she may have been an athletic individual, was local to Frederick, as she did not match any missing person reports at the time and no one came forward to identify her. Over the years, 19 women have been ruled out of the investigation as a match. Jane Doe was discovered in Frederick, Maryland, in a steamer trunk on August 24, 1982. She is described as a white woman with dark brown, slightly wavy hair and is between 5'3" and 5'5". She weighs 110 to 130 pounds and is believed to be between the ages of 17 and 27. She has extensive dental work and spondylosis, which may have been asymptomatic. If you have any information about her identity or her death, you can contact the Frederick PD anonymously on 301-600-8477. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.